Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this video, we're going to discuss the recent events of the prisoner release between Hamas and the Zionist Israeli terrorists. So let's discuss this issue, and we're going to discuss the propaganda behind it. So, as you know, we've seen language. Language is used as a propaganda tool in order to show that one party is evil while the other party is innocent and fighting for justice. We believe as Muslims, yes, two sides have committed wrongs. We're not here defending Hamas, and we're not here defending what Israel did. All we're showing is that both sides have committed wrong, and the International Criminal Court is holding both sides accountable for committing forms of genocide. That said, what we're going to show in this video, the double standards and the hypocrisy coming out of the media when it comes to the narrative behind showing one party who is fighting for justice and another party who is just plain evil. Israel unequivocally has committed acts of genocide, and this is why they are running from the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and they are sanctioning it. So, God willing, hopefully in the future, we will see a prosecution, and these people who have committed genocide and massacre and ethnic cleansing inside Gaza and the West Bank will be held accountable, just like Milosevic, who committed a genocide against the Muslims in Bosnia. Just like he was held accountable, hopefully Netanyahu will also be held accountable. So, let's now discuss the media biases and the hypocrisy. So recently, a deal was made between Hamas and Israel that they would do a prisoner exchange. If you go look at most of the media narrative, whenever they describe a Palestinian being released from an Israeli dungeon, they are called prisoners. However, whenever Israelis are being released from captivity, they are called hostages. They are called hostages. So they are playing the propaganda game. They are calling the Muslim Palestinians prisoners, and they are calling the Israeli Jews hostages. So these two terms are constantly pushed in the media, because when you use the word prisoner, you're basically saying that this person is guilty, most likely guilty. But if you use the term hostage, this term is they are completely innocent, right? So what they're basically trying to say is that no, Israel is just. Israel takes people who are worthy of being put in prison. This is why we're calling them prisoners, right? So you can see the language here. This is The Guardian. They say the hostages to be freed. Listen, the hostages to be freed are women and children. This is talking about the Jews. And the Palestinian prisoners. Now, we marked it off and put hostages to make fun of them. So notice they use the word Palestinian prisoners. Are also women and age 18 and younger. Notice they don't use the word children, because Israel is not only taking women hostages, but they're also taking child hostages. And we know that the media constantly plays this. So you can go to the Daily Mail, for instance. They'll say a Muslim gang jailed for kidnapping and raping two girls. They use the word Muslim gang. Now, in Israel, in an Israeli hotel room, 30 Jews gang raped a 16-year-old girl. Instead of saying Jewish gang or Jewish men, they used the word 30 men. That's it. 30 men. No religion mentioned, no nothing. But when it comes to a Muslim doing this, or Arab men or Pakistani men doing it, they call it Muslim gang, as you can see here. So we discussed the word hostages and prisoners. They also use the word died and killed. So when Muslims are killed, right, the media BBC, they say more than 500 people have died in Gaza. Died in Gaza. But when it comes to Israelis or Jews, they say more than 700 people have been killed in Israel. Killed, so died. So died could be just, randomly a person just dies, right? Or, it just sounds very innocent. But when you say killed, you have an intent, like an intent to murder them. So notice these are the media biases and the propaganda that they use. You can see it again here. See how they use the word? At least 70 killed in Israel and 190 dead in Gaza. So these are the terms that they use. You can see the same again where this little girl, this Palestinian girl, Hind Rajab 6, it says, BBC reports and says, found dead in Gaza days after phone call for help. So she was actually drone striked, intentionally killed and drone striked by the Israeli military. And they use the word found dead, like, this child just randomly was just found dead. But when it comes to Ukraine war, and it was a Russian airstrike, they used the word baby killed in Russian strike on Kiev hotel. Killed. Notice, found dead when it comes to Israelis. Israelis bombing Palestinians. A baby was found dead. Clearly, there was no intention. There was no criminal activity. Israel is completely innocent. We're going to use the word found dead. But when it comes to Russia doing an airstrike against a hotel, they say baby killed. They didn't say baby found dead. They say baby killed. This is again reported in the BBC. And at times, depending whether there's uproar, and sometimes there is social media uproar, and it forces the BBC to change their headlines. So in the BBC, it says there was a person with Down syndrome that was intentionally a Palestinian person with Down syndrome. He was attacked by an IDF dog. With an IDF soldier came in, attacked him with a dog, and he was left to die, right? And so what happened was the BBC made the first report, and they write, listen to what they write in the headlines. They say, the lonely death of a Gaza man with Down syndrome. No mention in the headlines that a IDF soldier committed this genocide and massacre, right? So what did they write? The BBC was forced to change its headline, The Lonely Death of a Gaza Man with Down Syndrome, after public uproar over it hiding Israeli soldier using a dog to kill the Palestinian man. So then the BBC came out and changed their headline, and then they wrote, Gaza man with Down syndrome attacked by IDF dog and left to die, mother tells BBC. So this is why it's really important as a community to come together, whether you're Muslim, Christian, Jew, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever you are, to come together. And when you see something that is biased and that is propaganda, then you should open your mouth and voice your concern, because public pressure will eventually expose them and they'll be forced to change their headlines. And you see this propaganda again on Wikipedia, it shows the death toll in Gaza Strip and Israel. You'll see where it says Gaza Strip here, it says 42,344 killed, but when it comes to Israel, it says 934 civilians killed. 934 civilians killed. And notice it says 251 captured or abducted. 251 captured or abducted. And you can see this YouTube video where Hamas gives gifts to hostages inside Gaza. You had a lot of positives in the comments where it says differences between both captives tell all the full story. You see another person wrote, I never saw hostages looking so happy comparing to the Palestinian hostages. Another person said, considering what Gaza looks like, it's incredible they managed to keep the captives alive and healthy. They gave the hostages a certificate of graduation. They are now fully aware of what Israel really is. What a huge difference between captives of Hamas and Israel. Another person says, hostages for Israel, prisoners for Palestinians. That tells you everything. So this person points out the hypocrisy. So in this discussion, we're going to answer the criticism. So basically, one person says that there's a war, apparently, and one side is capturing enemy combatants, and the other side is capturing civilians. Okay, so he's basically trying to justify and say the reason why the media for Israel, the pro-Zionist media, labels the Palestinian people who have been taken as prisoners is because they are guilty. That's why we call them prisoners. And the ones that Hamas take, they are innocent. That's why we call them captives, right? But this is, or hostages. But this is why this is a propaganda tool. Because if you have a look at Israel's strategic plan, they have detained almost 11,300 people. This is, you can look this up at Wikipedia. It says 11,300 detained, right? Now, what does detained mean? So they just take anyone randomly in the street. They just go, they blow up the whole city, whatever. They go in and they detain whoever they want, right? Without any legal prosecution, without them having any judicial system, without them having any barrister or lawyer. They're just taken and put in Israeli dungeons, right? And so the question is, how exactly are you saying that Israel is capturing enemy combatants when most of them are women and children who they're taking? All right. And we saw the footages in the street where they line them up. They put a humanitarian corridor, as they call it. They capture as much men and women and children. They arrest them and then they take them. And a lot of these charges are, maybe there might be a charge where a Palestinian kid threw a stone. So what, you put him in prison now for throwing a stone? A lot of them, there is just suspicion. That's all they have. Majority of their cases is suspicion that they're part of Hamas. And remember, before I used the term strategic plan, and there's actually a reason why Israel or the IDF is capturing innocent people who are not combatants of war, who did not engage in any military operation against Israel. And the reason why Israel used this as a strategic plan, because they want to use those people as human shields in order to release Israeli captives, prisoners. Okay? That's why they're taking this. So this is a very good strategic plan from them. This is a strategic plan. They are taking innocent men, women, and children, blowing the whole city up, taking all of these innocent women and children, and they're keeping them as bait. So why they're keeping them as bait? Because they're going to now use these innocent women and children in order to do a prison exchange with Hamas. Okay? So how do we know this? Because if you have a look at the prison exchange ratio, so they make a commitment, Israel makes a commitment with Hamas, they make an agreement that Israel is going to release 90, listen to this, 90 people for only three Israeli prisoners. Imagine this, look at the ratio. 3 Israelis for 90 Palestinians. How is that ratio even fair? How is that ratio even fair? Why would Israel do a prisoner swap deal for 90 versus 3? Doesn't make sense, does it? Well, the truth is, folks, maybe out of those 90 prisoners, right, only 2 of them or 3 of them are real offenders. The rest are innocent, completely innocent. So they're like, realistically, we're only releasing 3 versus 3. We're doing a prison swap. But they're putting an additional 90 because Israel's like, we know they're innocent. We just took them. So it's a better negotiation because Hamas is something very hard to deal with. Very hard to deal with, right? So they're like, they're adamant. And so it's going to look like they're getting the better deal, but it's not really a better deal. It's really not a better deal because what we took originally were 90 innocent people, right? So it's not really a better deal. And here's the other thing too. Why is Israel releasing majority of them women and children? I thought both the women and children were enemy combatants and they participated as enemy combatants. Right? If that is true, why aren't they also releasing, say, 50% women and 50% men? Why aren't they doing that? Because they know that the women and children are innocent, and that's why majority of them, over 70 or 80% of them that are being released are women and the children. The men, you very hardly hear prisoner exchange of men. And this is another side point. Where are all the feminist activists who talk about equal rights? Why aren't they coming out and saying, why is Israel being so sexist that it's doing a prison exchange and majority of the ones that are being released are women and children? So what happened to all the men? You don't hear them speak about that, which is quite interesting, isn't it? For example, some of these girls are so young that the IDF arrested a 6-year-old girl and forcefully took her from her family. Is she a trained fighter too? You are sick in the head. And here's the thing, folks. Their Bible, Netanyahu spoke that he used the language of go and attack Malachi, right? This is a biblical quote where in 1 Samuel 15:3, and you see that the Mosaic law commanded the Jews to go out and kill men, women, and children. So according to their law, according to their Torah, their Talmud, that you can kill the Goyim, you can kill the non-Jew, and you can kill the women and the children. None of them are innocent according to their scripture, right? So this is why it's actually justifiable for them to kill and massacre women and children. This is why even that 6-year-old girl is not innocent according to them. This is how sick these people are. And the argument used from these people, yeah, well, they're not innocent because they cheer for Hamas rockets. I'm pretty sure you've heard Ben Shapiro mention that many times, that, hey, none of them are really innocent because they cheer for Hamas rockets, right? Now, imagine we used that argument. Imagine we said none of the prisoners that Hamas took are really innocent because they're the same Jews that go on social media and they chant for God, God bless Israel, and Israel is only for the Jews, right? And these are made of children and women as well, right? And they were sitting on the borders besieging the Gazan people. And remember, Israel forced out evictions of Palestinians from Israel, and they kept taking land and taking over their houses. And we know that there's videos on social media saying that a Jew's literally taking a house in the West Bank, and he's saying if he doesn't take it, if he doesn't steal it, then someone else will. So they do forced evictions, and then Israel starts giving visas to all of these American Zionists who live in America, and says, look, we've stolen these lands now. Now we're doing settlements. Now you can come and settle in these homes, and they actually border the Gaza Strip, or they border the West Bank and so forth. And this is against the UN resolution, and the UN has constantly condemned Israel for an apartheid state and for occupying Gaza and Israel and the West Bank. So then now that Israel has given them these settlements, and these so-called innocent people have accepted to invade those lands and settle on those borders, and then Hamas goes and captures them, obviously, the question now remains, are those hostages actually really innocent for invading someone else's land? Now, just imagine, folks, imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. Let's just imagine. Suppose Hamas in Gaza invades Israel and takes about 40% of the land. 40% of the Israeli land. So they've got Gaza, and they intrude into Israel, and they take about 40 or 50% of the land, and then they evict Jews from their home, and they call Palestinians from Egypt, from Iran, from Turkey, wherever they are, and they settle them in those lands. They settle them there, and then the Jews do an uproar, and they do a military advancement, and then they bomb and kill and they capture these houses, and they take these Palestinians and put them in their dungeons. What would be the sentiment? What would be the sentiment? Would the media say, "Oh, Israel took hostages"? Would the media say, "Oh, Israel took captives"? No, they would say they were justified in doing that because you had illegal occupation. You had these Palestinians who invaded their land and forced themselves and took the Israeli homes and settled in a land that was illegal, so they would have called it an illegal occupation, and the media and the Israeli IDF would have justified taking those Palestinians and putting them in their dungeons and saying that these people are prisoners. They are guilty of their crimes, of what they did, the genocide that they did, right? But you see, If it's in reverse, they won't accept that guilty charge. But if Hamas does it, no, they are suddenly guilty, right? And so that's clearly a double standard right there. So if you have a look at the 90 people, if you have a look at the 90 people that was put in the prison exchange, 69 of them were women. 69 were women. So that's the question. That's the question that the Israeli propaganda team need to answer. If they were enemy combatants, why 69 women being released? And only 21 of them are men. Surely, if women are enemy combatants and got a gun, and the men have got a gun, then it should be a 50-50, right? It should be equal. But no, they are letting go of more women than they are letting go of men. Much more. The proportion is much more. So clearly Israel understands that these women are not enemy combatants. They're not going to go home and then, pick up a gun and then go into the tunnels and start firing weapons as missiles at Israel. They know that this is what the men are doing. It's not the women. You're not seeing all these mass women got these AK-47s running out of tunnels and things like that. It's actually the men who are doing this. And like I said at the beginning of this video, the reason why Israel is releasing so many women and so many children is because this is their tactic of war. Most of them who have been detained are detained without charge. They're innocent. And the reason why Israel has done that is because the more people it can detain, the more people it can take. If it can take thousands of people into Israeli dungeons, then it will be easier to negotiate a prison exchange with Hamas. See, one person says, those children are trained fighters. Well, if those children are trained fighters, why is Israel releasing more of the children and more of the women compared to men? Now, you may say, well, if we release the children and the women, they'll be less likely they'll be hiding in tunnels to fire attacks at Israel. But here is the thing. Here's the thing. Those children have got a longer lifespan now. So although you're releasing those children saying they're not going to be an immediate threat, but they're going to still be a long-term effect, which is even worse, which means the war is going to be dragged on for longer because these children are younger, right? So this claim that, we're just releasing children and we're releasing women because it's going to be a less of a threat. No, it's not going to be less of a threat. The war's going to prolong even longer when you're releasing the women and the children because, number one, the women are going to continue to breed more, right, and produce more children, and you've got younger fighters who have got a longer lifespan. And they talk about Palestinian children are trained fighters. There are videos, and I'll put a hyperlink below this video. There are videos all over social media. Israeli children are being taught hate, and they are taught how to do military. Right? Which is ironic. So suppose Hamas starts capturing these children and saying, these children are also trained fighters. They're taught to hate the Arabs. Therefore, it's justified to capture them. Would this actually be acceptable for Israel and these Zionist trolls on social media? And here's the interesting thing, folks. Here's the interesting thing. They say that Hamas is taking these children as human shields. So first they say that Hamas is using children and women as human shields, but then the same Israel says that they are guilty. These human shields themselves are guilty. So that's why we need to prison them. So the storyline doesn't add up. How can Hamas be using women and children as human shields when apparently Hamas has radicalized those children and women, and these children and women are fighting for Hamas? Doesn't make sense. And the other thing that doesn't make sense, if Hamas is using these children and women as human shields and has tricked them and brainwashed them, and yet you show no sympathy towards women and children. You yourself bomb them, and you yourself capture them, and you yourself put them in your dungeons, right? And you even say they fight for Hamas, and you still punish them. I find that very, very interesting, because if someone is being pushed against their will, how can they be guilty? The example is this. If a mafia gang, if a criminal gang, a drug trafficking gang coerces a child to smuggle drugs for that criminal organization and brainwashes that child, would it be fair for the judicial system to take that child and put them in prison? You'd say, no, that's not fair, because that child was coerced, brainwashed to join that criminal syndicate, right? So why can't we use that same logic and argument for the Palestinian children? Why then we do not say that these children were coerced, they were brainwashed, and therefore you should not be putting them in your prison. You should not be putting them in your prison. Right? Because they are innocent, they were coerced, right? They did something against their will, right? They were pressured. They were pressured because if they did not fulfill those duties, they were going to get killed by Hamas themselves. See? You will never ever make that same argument. You will never use the drug trafficking argument to defend innocent children. You will never use that argument for Palestinian children, which again exposes your double standards. And here is another double standard, and I'll keep discussing these double standards. So they accuse Hamas of taking child soldiers. They'll say Hamas is taking 13 or 14-year-old boys and girls and training them, and Hamas is using these children to fight against Jews, right? And you say that this is wrong. This is ethically wrong. You should not be using children to fight your wars. This is against the Geneva Convention. This is against human rights. This is totally wrong. You should not be doing that, right? You should not be using children to join your terrorist organization to fight your wars, because this is inhumane. This is inhumane, and this is wrong. You should not be using children, right? And we Jews, if you look at the IDF never uses children soldiers or child soldiers. You have to have a certain age requirement. You need to be like 18 years and above to serve in the military, in the Israeli military. See, we're ethical. We're not barbaric. We're not animals like Hamas, right? We're not like that. But here's the interesting point. You accuse Hamas for using child soldiers, but then you have no issues in killing child soldiers. You have no issues in bombing child soldiers. And not only that, you have no issue in locking up these children and saying how these children are guilty, even though they have been coerced or forced to join the military. The double standards. So you're just as bad as Hamas. You're just as bad as Hamas, because Hamas finds them eligible for fighting, And you, although you say that this is wrong, this is ethically wrong for Hamas to use child soldiers, you have no problem in punishing child soldiers. So you're just as bad as Hamas. So with that, please like, share, and subscribe. We will continue to expose the Zionist propaganda. Please also visit the link. I'll put a hyperlink below this article. You'll see my website where we go through all of these arguments. And yeah, I think you'll enjoy it.